Welcome to 509 Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hazen. Once again with me this week, Ted Haycraft.
In America.
Today we are... Ooh, you're starting this one off on a...
What?
On a tight wire rope. We're discussing the musical sequences of Steven Spielberg's career. The man is only... He's making movies for now 50 years, feature films. I mean, saying forever he wanted to make a musical, finally made his first musical.
Well, did you think about this? I did this today. I did a little homework.
Mm-hmm.
Francis Coppola, he did Finnegan's Rainbow in 68.
Mm-hmm.
And then One from the Heart.
Yeah, One from the Heart.
And then the Cotton Club, if you want to count that.
I'll count that.
And Captain EO.
Yeah.
So you got, I'm thinking 68, he's already got a full-blown old school musical done. I'm talking about his peers. Scorsese, New York in 77. So
okay.
he gets right under the wire before the Jitterbug in 1941.
Right. Good call.
And then you got then Scorsese's all kind of over the place. Last Waltz, Michael Jackson's Bad, an episode of The Blues on PBS, the Bob Dylan documentary, Shine a Light. Stones, you got George Harrison documentary, you got Vinyl, The Pilot.
Right.
And Rolling Thunder Review.
Let's go. Who's the next?
De Palma.
How to the Orson Welles movie?
Phantom of Paradise.
Oh, of course.
74. And then you got if you want, Frankie Goes to Hollywood video, that's a body double.
Yeah.
And he does a Bruce Springsteen video.
Well, the trick of all of this is when you're going down your Scorsese list, you're naming movies with music in it besides New York, which we've done an episode on.
Right. Well, I'm not.
This comes to the thing with Spielberg is such a musical director, but I'm talking about.
I know. I'm throwing documentary. I'm just talking about. I'm just kind of like.
No. I get what you're going.
And then Paul Schrader. He did a Bob Dylan video, Tight Connection to My Heart, in the mid-'80s. And you got Light of Day with Michael J. Fox.
Well, if this is your criteria, Spielberg's going to have much more of this. But let's go ahead. Before we go into this, let's go. What did you watch this week, Ted?
We
need our intro. What did you watch this week?
What did I watch?
Ted, we do this every episode. Come on now.
I know, but you went ahead and I thought we were in the guts of the story. Anyway, what did I watch? I watched
we watched Spider-Man last night.
Right, yeah, we watched Spider-Man last night.
We can talk about that.
Don't Look Up. I've seen Being the Ricardos.
You like Don't Look Up. That's getting really terrible reviews.
I walked into. I guess I think it's very true. I walked in without low expectations because I heard the buzz was not that great on it, and walked into it and loved it. I'm so glad Showplace brought both these films in. That are not you have to start streaming at the day we're recording this, but I'm really glad to see these on a big screen. I think it's this era as Dr. Strangelove. It's not on the same standard. I think it's going to be hard ever to reach the peak of Dr. Strangelove, but it's obviously playing in that field where, and also I love there's a lot of everybody's using the word Easter eggs now, or little jokes and little things. I actually think we ought to start trying to use the word chicken fat.
Because it's a little excessive?
Well, no, because that's the actual term that Will Elder did when he did Mad Magazine and Mad Comics.
Okay.
He would draw all these little jokes in it. And then Mort Drucker continued it on in Mad Magazine.
Why chicken fat?
I think it was just a term he came up with. There was probably a reason, but but that was just what he called it. But
wait a minute, so you're just saying you want to reference Mad Magazine in regards to no real reason for the term itself.
It's a very modern day National Lampoon Mad Magazine movie. In terms of the humor.
This is going to come up in 1941. Our conversation here too, but
yeah, but
the exhaustion and signs are already
We'll see about that. But and then the Cardinals is interesting. I never once ever thought I was watching Lucille or Desi or Frank.
Fair enough.
But I enjoyed their performances. But yet I didn't really. They were not. I didn't get. The illusion was not lost on me. But more so the what they went through. It's the contextual stuff and the narrative, the themes, and what goes on. They're trying to make an I Love Lucy episode.
I haven't seen these two yet, and I feel like I'm going to have strong opinions on them. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to talk too much about Spider-Man, but I will want to say this one thing. You sent me a review today from, was it Variety?
Mm-hmm.
That really, this is not a spoiler if you've seen the second trailer to Spider-Man, but one of the key conflicts in the movie is that Spider-Man doesn't want the villains to die. He wants to help the villains. And this comes up because our last episode with Douglas Volk and all the Marvels, there's the chapter we discussed in there towards the end of the book about Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, and that a lot of, and I made the point in the episode, Douglas and I were talking, where I said that the MCU, from a moral standpoint, is maybe behind the Marvel Universe in regards of Squirrel Girl, the published Marvel Universe, because Squirrel Girl is constantly trying to rehabilitate her villains. And then this movie comes along, and you had an interesting reaction when you were talking.
Yeah, my initial reaction is like, well, who cares? These are, they're bad guys.
You said kill the villains.
Kill them, that's just get rid of them. And then weren't they killed in the movies they're taking from?
Yes, they're I think to the T.
So it's just like, what's the big deal? But then I don't want, like I said,
we don't want to spoil anything.
So, but just
because this is a movie with a lot of.
It deserves it. Actually, deserves a podcast. Well, I'm sure there can be 5,000 podcasts about it.
Yeah.
So we won't add much to it than anybody else will.
My two this week are I'm on 2 tracks where I'm watching just my normal path of stuff, and then I'm trying to do my movie catch up. My movie catch up, I finally watched Pig, which I was not expecting what that movie was going to end up being, and I'd heard so many good things about it. You saw Pig, right?
No, I'm sitting on my Blu-ray. I bought it the week it came out.
I think one of the reasons I held off on it, even though people I trust said it was really good, was I thought it was just going to be a dreary meditation on grief with Nicolas Cage in the woods, kind of like trying to act with a pig. And I was like, well, that might be great, but I wasn't jumping to it. That's not the movie. And it's still an amazing movie about grief, but it's not the movie. I watch it right away.
Yeah, I bought 2 Nicolas Cage movies just recently. About that, and the other one where he's got a samurai sword on it. Something in the Northland or Southland.
You and I had this conversation last night where I think Nicolas Cage, at least one movie per year the last few years, he's picked some great ones.
In fact, I called our resident Nicolas Cage guy that said, should I buy this one? Because we got a friend of ours who he'll go out of town not to miss a Nicolas Cage on the big screen. I did see Catch Me If You Can last week on the big screen.
Rewatch Catch Me If You Can.
And then we both saw West Side Story,
which we're going to discuss. Yeah, we don't need to bring up the movie we're going to discuss in the podcast itself.
We don't.
My last movie on the track of like watching just normal stuff, I saw Crime Wave, Andre Detosse movie. It's a film noir from I want to say 1952.
With Sterling Hayden?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I watched that back in 2011, I think.
What's so cool about it?
That's one of the ones that Scorsese clips in the Journey Through American Cinema.
Oh, part of the reason I was keen to watch is Patton Oswalt has been talking about this on podcasts. He says it's a very quintessential location shot LA film, and one of those. We elevate a lot of film noir that has more maybe. There's always a measure of the B movie film noir of is it beneath 90 minutes or not. So stuff like Detour and things like that, and these films feel like definite B movie, but they feel grungier and dirtier. And Crime Wave is definitely shot on LA streets in the early 50s when location shooting in LA wasn't that strong of a thing. And yeah, it's a great time capsule.
Quintessential Hayden performance.
And there's a lot of people in there that are going to end up in The Killing. So that was another.
Yeah. It's interesting because Nightmare Alley is opening up tonight, and I was reading an article about that where it's one of the exceptions. There's an article about noir films. Most of them are B films, and they're short. They're B films. But this actually is a noir film that was the original with Tyrone Power is actually an A film.
Yeah.
But it happened to be a noir. There's some films that were A films, but noir.
We're going to have to talk about this later, especially after I watch the new Nightmare Alley. Like, I know Nightmare Alley is designated as noir, but like it just feels...
It's a little, it's a variant. I mean, it depends on how tightly you want to define noir. I mean, that's the thing. Noir is a very...
Noir, you think of like contrasty lighting, urban city stuff. And this, like, there's a little bit of it, but I mean, we're talking the circus, upper scale. I forget what city it takes place in.
They make a point about that in the cinematographer. Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that, you keyed into that, because that's... He does say the contrast is not there.
This is not to say that you can't apply a lighting and ethos to that makes it noirish.
This is more. It's more the morality, the moral aspect of the noir, of the noir films.
Okay.
So.
We've skirted the subject long enough, but now. Are you ready to talk Spielberg's non-musicals? You're sighing because I want to talk about 1941. When was the last time you watched 1941?
Well, did I watch all of it? I got a Blu-ray not too long ago, and I watched the making of.
I just watched the making. Is that from like some 90s Laserdisc?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I have a big giant box set of laser. It's a huge thing.
It's funny, the anamorphic 16:9 image just cuts off the lower third titles for everybody on the DVD, which I think was taken from. The one that's on there is the special edition. I don't know if I've ever seen the theatrical cut of 1941.
Oh, really?
I've only seen the longer special edition. 1941, I've been wanting to talk about it for a long time. It's not a movie I love yet, or I like yet, but every time I watch it, I get closer and closer. And there's a lot to like about it. It is such a big spectacle that also is colossally Spielberg himself, even pretty early on, was saying things like, this is a conceptual nightmare. Like, just the concept of it, like, it's so well executed from that concept, but the concept itself is just blow shit up. The most expensive movie made up to that point, to blow shit up in a fun way, in a gag-laden way.
Speaking of Mad Magazine, I mean,
yeah,
a bit. Yeah, I mean, I wish you would. I wish you were. If you were my age, you would remember the build up to this thing. It was so huge because Jaws, Close Encounters, and I was becoming a huge deep cinephile. So I was reading, and back then, you had to wait for an article in Rolling Stone or an article here. I didn't have access to Variety. I didn't have access to, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then I start reading the cast, and then 1941, it's got Belushi and Aykroyd at the apex of their popularity and all this stuff.
Animal House in World War II.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, man. And then, boy, the knives came out, and they just really just skewered it big time. And
to be fair, those knives, especially if I had that disappointing reaction coming off of seeing Jaws and Close Encounter and not having been warned about this, deserved.
Well, it was funny. I can't remember. Of course, I'm the wrong person to talk to because there's people my age, older and younger, that still go, I hate that film. That film is terrible. It sucks. And that's, and it still permeates today. I'm much more gray, you know how I am.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I probably walked out of it probably going, it didn't work, but I like this and that. And I mean, to me, what movie, you got Christopher Lee playing a Nazi,
right,
and Mifune and as a Japanese warrior
in the same scene,
I'm like,
sequence.
Oh my gosh. And then the opening with the Jaws takeoff right off the bat, I loved.
The Jaws one has always thrown me off. That does seem like a really big thing of hubris, but there's a lot of Jaws.
Well, there's I forgot about the gas station. He's riffing
Duel,
and Close Encounters because the dust, all the dirt and dust and everything.
Oh, from the
beginning of when they found the planes and
planes in the desert.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. What really got me closer this time was watching that behind the scenes, and I think I've told you this before, but one of my possibly like one of my top comedy directors of all time is Chuck Jones. I would put him ahead of Keaton or Charlie Chaplin even.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not the hugest Keaton or Chaplin fan.
Oh my.
But Chuck Jones was a consultant on this, and he'd come up with sequences in here. And some of that, Three Stooges, slapsticks,
screaming, and more screaming. I do love Warren Oates screaming. Let me hear your guns.
Well, Spielberg tells the story of watching the movie with the preview audience, and he's like, I've never seen an audience. I've seen them being frightened enough to cover their eyes, but I've never seen them cover their ears. And he says things like, this should feel like a demolition derby, or and that is the effect on the movie. But the reason we're talking about this, this is probably Spielberg when he made it said that he wanted to make it a musical and he didn't have the courage of his convictions, but he had the idea that it was going to be an old-fashioned musical. He pushed John Williams to write they were going to use 8 big band things from Tommy Dorsey and Vinnie Goodman, and Spielberg said if he came up with a sequence that's not in the movie where there was going to be a giant dance number on the Hollywoodland sign, and his idea was like to take certain parts of the screenplay. The phrase he uses 20 lines of dialogue and then put a song in that advances the plot forward. And the problem with that is that 1941's problem is that it's all these gags and things. Nothing in 1941 advances the story forward. It's all just gags for gag's sakes, explosion. Spielberg's obsession in the movie was like trying to come up with an interesting way of filming explosions. But the one sequence that has aged really well, the real reason we're talking about this movie in terms of musicals, in Spielberg's musicals, is the Jitterbug sequence. And then Spielberg said it's the funnest sequence in the movie that he had to film. And this gets to, I mean, this sequence that you like, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, the more I watch, people look at me kind of weird when I say this one. I end up, every time I revisit 1941, I like it more and more. I don't know what that says about me, but I mean, I guess maybe it's nostalgic and sentimental and memories, but I love it, and looking for a very young Mickey Rourke and Ned Betty's haircut, and Slim Pickens in there, and just over
There's
and over again.
so much to like in
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
There's so many elements that come together, and it ends up being the most expensive movie, blowing stuff up. But the sequence is choreographed by Paul DeRolf, who, it was funny, I looked up his credits. His other credits include, he created some TV shows, but his other credits as choreographer include Karate Kid Part 2 and one individual episode of Beverly Hillbillies and Petticoat Junction.
The thing about the Jitterbug is, so you think that's just like A+ quality dance sequence?
We should probably also rewind a little to talk about Spielberg's bona fides about doing a musical and why it's weird that Spielberg hasn't done a musical at that point. And the Jitterbug sequence, I think, exemplifies.
Well, I think thing about, here's the thing I wanted to point out about this.
Okay.
As good as fun it is, and the John Williams is kind of riffing on Sing, 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 but he's making a song that's called Sing, 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 Swing, Swing, Swing. But there's a lot of Rube Goldberg aspect to this dance sequence. You know what I mean? Like the Rube Goldberg's, the comic strip artist.
One thing leads to another?
Yeah, the knock over and that kind of thing. He was known, he would come up and the strips were...
You think that's a bad thing?
No, I'm not saying the bad thing, but I'm not saying it's not so much, it's a combination of that and a dance sequence. It seems like sometimes a dance also just becomes a big Goldberg sequence, and then it goes back into a dance sequence, I think, at times.
Yeah.
It's an interesting mix, I think.
Well, it's funny, that metaphor is almost like saying one thing leads to another. That's good storytelling. You're supposed to A leads to B leads to C.
But I'm talking about a spoon falls down and it fills a cup up, and the cup full. That's what he was known for, and I think that's part of the Jitterbug sequence is really exiting that.
I need to stop and talk for a second about Spielberg as when critics talk about Spielberg and filmmakers talk about Spielberg, it's a totally different thing. Spielberg, I don't think people appreciate how much of a filmmaker's filmmaker so many people Steven Spielberg is. Like, you get filmmakers talking about what Spielberg does, they don't go on about his obsession with being a child that never grows up or hating fathers, or sometimes they'll bring up the like overwhelming sentimentality, but it's usually in regard to how much a sequence elevates above that, not liking that. As a technician, as a stager, as a master of mise-en-scene and all the things moving around, there is a reason Spielberg is unparalleled. Well, like some of the reviews I read of West Side Story, I've seen this quote mentioned multiple times. It came from Pauline Kael's review of Sugarland Express, where she said she talked to a director, and there's some speculation that it was Hitchcock. I think it might be Billy Wilder. But the idea is that the quote says something along the lines that Spielberg probably has never seen a play in his life, and that he only thinks with a camera lens, and he doesn't think with a proscenium. So every time he's staging something, all he thinks about is this small piece of object moving around in air to be there perfectly. But all the things that like a good director does, Spielberg adds, like things directors are supposed to be trying to do to make in cinematography, not just photography, three-dimensionality, like moving your subject across the frame to keep the eye busy, maintaining depth by having upstage, downstage, constantly changing it. I worked with a director a few years ago when we kept talking about how Spielberg and maybe Fincher were the two masters of making a shot that had two amazing keyframe compositions all in the same shot, and the second composition would just come out of nowhere. And some directors who try this are too flashy with it, and Spielberg's been doing this for so long, but even from the beginning he was so good at this. So this leads towards a musical, the musical being the most cinematic, where a camera should just float and move. He should have done a musical a long time ago.
Yeah, well, for anybody out there listening that doesn't really think that doesn't go as goofy as we do over movies. One thing I remember when I started really getting into movies, the one thing that it was a revelation, saying that musicals, a lot of directors all want to do musicals, and why would they want to do a musical? Because you get to break reality and get to do anything you want to do with the camera and your actors and everything. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
And it also belies the point that a lot of the staging, there's also a giant amount of rhythm and musicality in there, just to like, when one moment happens to another, there's a meter, there's a beat to it, and the way a visual element, a visual motif, if you will, reveals itself, like it works just the same way as music.
Well, it sounds like I was surprised. I think John Williams said this in the 1941 featurette or someplace. He was like, some of the music was already.
He said there was more. It was funny because they were coming off Close Encounters, where they had to come up with the 5-tone. Yeah, before he said there was more music prep early on this than any other movies.
And I go back to Leone, and where the Italians were.
You always go back to Leone.
We were in a good place because they did all their audio post. So Sergio would have, by the time he got to Once Upon a Time in the West, he has Morricone make all the themes for the characters, and they play it on the damn set. Mm-hmm. And you can move. So can you imagine? He's got the actors and he's got the camera in pacing with the music.
Yeah, and Spielberg does the same thing too. So, yeah. I mean, it's not, you brought this up multiple times, but it's a great instance of like,
which is not normal for a lot of Hollywood films.
I think it's just because it is the most popular and most successful early usage of it, but other directors have done it since.
Oh yeah. No.
Kubrick very famously started doing this after this point, just playing even with mood music.
Yeah, he called. Well, I love that in the Leone biography, Kubrick calls Sergio, and he goes. Because why do your movies play so well with the Morricone music, and then Barry Lyndon, he was getting ready to work on Barry Lyndon, yeah.
Spielberg played the clarinet as a child. There's stories in Joseph McBride's biography of him. He did musicals as kids where he was like, he ran the teleprompter on a school musical of Guys and Dolls, and he played clarinet in that Guys and Dolls and for Brigadoon. His mom used to play the piano with him as a baby on his lap. Although West Side Story is dedicated to his father, which I found notable. But Spielberg, musicality is in his genes, and it's been there for a while. And so he's been wanting to do mention the musical forever. So 1941, he doesn't fully blown have the courage of his convictions, to use his own phrase.
That's why I was bringing up his peers, how his peers had already dived in and had done some. Or will do some, like another one was Bogdanovich, Long Last Love, which
Bogdanovich, that's a good one. That's a great one.
Got lambasted for that. Albin really doesn't do one till Popeye, really, and then that's about it. I got Streets of Fire with Walter Hill, but that's just certain numbers. But it's certain, and that's more stage. As opposed to it breaks the reality. It doesn't break the reality.
Would you say the 70s or the 80s are the low for musicals? It
was. In fact, today before I left here at the station, when I work at a TV station, I polled about 5 kids there working there, director, just different people. I said, guys, what's the deal with musicals? Did you all participate in musicals? Almost all of them did stuff in middle, worked in a live action musical or whatever. Of course, somebody brought up Hamilton, but I said, yeah, but would you watch Hamilton if I start going, I'm Alexander Hamilton and I'm going to write up? And they go, no, but they did see Hamilton with the hip hop music. There's something about, there's a stigma. It's still kind of there about musicals with the corny music. That a lot of kids don't like, and they keep on trying to break that code, trying to attract people. That's why Hamilton did help in one way. But remember the Beatle one, Across the Universe. Mm-hmm. Thought they were good. That was going to be one that cracked the code, but it didn't really do it.
Yeah.
But then one kid had nothing to do with musicals, and then I said, would you guys like to go see musicals in the movies? No, not really. But they go see. But think about the Broadway stage. Yeah. Is it a niche?
Did you need to see the live performance? Well, because you're saying this, I used to hate musicals.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
I was raised on Disney musicals, they didn't feel like to this point.
Let me talk about the post Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid on.
Right.
which was basically they figured a way to hook you guys into liking musicals without knowing you like musicals.
But I didn't like them. Is my point.
I know, but that's what it was.
It always seemed sanitized. One big issue, which Spielberg points out in 1941, that I think he wouldn't have failed at, is they didn't feel like they advanced the story forward. They always felt like they stopped it, and they felt like music I wasn't interested in.
It depends. You have to go by case on those. But that was in the history of musicals. That was the big thing. When they first started out with the talkie era, it's just like everything would start with Busby Berkeley, and was just hey, we can sing and dance for the audience. But then somebody, I think is the what's his name? I can't think of the MGM section with Stanley Donen worked in and Gene Kelly, but they started
Minnelli? Vincent Minnelli?
No, Minnelli was another one. This is I can't think of the producer's name. It was a producer. There was a couple of different camps in MGM that were musical experts. And the big deal was like when the song would advance the story or play on the theme, that was a big deal. What about? But don't you see now looking back at your Disney love of those musicals, don't you see how is Little Mermaid any different than the Music Man? But
no, I do appreciate, especially Little Mermaid. I've come to appreciate more. I think it's more. What happened was I had to find in a lot of instances you have to find someone who liked it, who really likes it to kind of mentor you into liking it. But there was the wave of, I remember the two big ones that really got me right in a row that really made me fall in love with musicals were Dancer in the Dark and the Buffy musical.
Well, see, those are modern day ones. Have you gone back to older ones now? Have you made any kind of, due diligence on like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers or Sing in the Rain? I guess.
Actually, you know what? I had an epiphany this summer. What the other thing that made me dislike musicals was our local summer musicals. They always seemed, and I really
the live local ones.
Yeah, and I realized that it's the taste of our local. It was this musicals they picked were the blandest, most anodyne, like boring, and then like Sondheim would have been one. And going to West Side Story, Sondheim seemed to write about some really dark stuff in interesting ways, and it was much later to find it. And some of this stuff is just papering over emotion, I guess.
Did you go to see The End of the Woods?
Yeah.
And did you like it?
That felt a little kind of that was more of a cinematic versus staging issue for me. But
right.
Anyway, but back to the 70s point, All That Jazz. We have our All That Jazz episode. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah, Bob Fosse. Forgot about All That Jazz. That belongs to my list here.
So my point was going to be that immediately after 1941, Spielberg tried to work on a movie called Reel to Reel that he wanted to make. It was going to be his first musical, and it was written by Gary David Goldberg, who created Family Ties. And it was an autobiographical movie about a director making his first film that was going to be a sci-fi musical. And he went to Sid Sheinberg was adapted a character in this movie. And Sid Sheinberg said no to the musical. And so Spielberg then ended up making E.T. after that.
Okay.
Then guess who took over the musical? Michael Cimino.
Oh, yeah. I did see that.
And they announced it was Spielberg producing it, but then it never got made. And then years later, Gary David Goldberg said Cimino made the movie darker, and the script wasn't there. But Spielberg flirted with more musicals. He's going to get to our next subject, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is not a musical except for the first 10 minutes, when it is completely a musical.
Yeah, and I thought... This is, can I make a really weird analogy here?
Oh, go for it.
I remember, so I go to see Moonraker.
Oh, wow. You delivered on that weird.
Yeah. And, it's after the Spy Love Me was a really, wonderful, fun Bond film. I think it's Roger Moore. If you're a Roger Moore fan, or if you can't stand Roger Moore, that's the one to watch. So we'll go to Moonraker, and it's like, okay, we're going to rip off Star Wars, and James Bond has to go to space. But anyway, it starts out, and it's like the greatest opening ever. Bond being thrown out of a plane, and then he's getting, he's been in midair without a parachute, and we hadn't seen something like this, and we're just like freaking out. And then it got stupid and silly with Jaws and the circus tent, and then the rest of the film to me was a write off, pretty much. And I'm almost thinking Temple of Doom is sort of like that. I love this opening sequence. I think I can recall my sense memory of thinking, wow, this is really cool. This big musical number. And then I didn't get my, they only had that portion on YouTube. I didn't get to see the chase of the jewel around the floor, which
you weren't able to rewatch it. Yeah. You mentioned this earlier.
I had a defective disc. But I'm thinking, I remember that just being a great, great opening. And then the rest of the stuff got silly, and I didn't care much for the rest of the film.
Really?
I just like, yeah. I think that's how I think that's how.
When was the last time you watched it?
I need to watch the whole thing again.
Have you seen it with theaters?
I may not have not seen it since the theater. Seriously, and so I may do 180 on it or 360.
Every episode, there's one big generational jaw drop for me between us. Like I was like,
I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I probably saw Crusade a couple of times because of Connery, or I've seen it more than. Even though I don't know, but in the first one just is a flat out masterpiece. But the second one, the whole spiel about how violent and gross and they do,
which is why it seems odd that you're treating it as a write off. That's why I'm just not.
I just remember I just remember I love the opening. I thought that was really wonderful, and then just the rest of it I don't.
Not even the heart ripping out stuff.
No, well, why would I like that? Why would when someone like
that doesn't seem like a silly write off? Is my point.
Well, I mean, that's probably the reason I wrote it off, because I was just like, our heart being ripped out in an Indiana Jones film doesn't need to be in there. I'm comparing it to the first film. I mean, it gets pretty, I guess, a melting face in the first one, but I don't know. Like I said, I need to revisit it. I mean, and maybe we have to come back and do a podcast.
I was partially, saying when you started this out, I was a part of me that was going to agree with you, just because I rewatched the sequence again and going all the way from the opening musical number till the airplane crash, which I remember whenever Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls came out and everyone complained about the nuke the fridge thing where they're like, Indiana Jones would have died. I'm like, do you guys remember that movie where he jumped out of a plane where a boat was his parachute?
Right.
And then they slid down a mountain and then fell down another cliff?
I might have been, that's where I might have wrote off there.
Okay.
I maybe, but I mean,
but I was gonna say the movie's great up until
I have a lot of these films in my history. I forget one thing I didn't tell you I watched this week was The Matrix on a big screen.
You told me about this last night.
I don't think I've seen it since 1999.
That was a jaw dropper last night when you told me that too.
I'm like,
these are infinitely rewatchable movies. That's
it was fun to watch. I'm like, I found a key thing in there. We won't go into that. That's another episode. But I'm just like, whoa, okay, maybe. So there's a lot of films like that, but there's so much I haven't seen. And of course now we got more streaming and TV and books, and there's always this sense I know some guys I'm not going to rewatch stuff. I got to go forward. I got to keep going forward.
I watched Tipple of Doom most whenever they'd show the widescreen version on the Sci-Fi Channel back in the late 90s, and in USA I think maybe showed it on widescreen sometimes too. And I used to watch. It was mainly I skipped pretty much, or I would kind of skip out for a lot of the background information for why they're going to the area with the kids. It was usually that sequence whenever the Indy got trapped in the chamber and was about to crush him. From then on, I'd watch get back into the movie. See, that's what I was like, okay, yeah, there's parts of the movies I'm just like, I didn't.
And I know. And the funny thing is, when I was looking it up and trying to find it on YouTube or Googling it or whatever, there's some major critic or writer or somebody, they just said that god awful opening dance number. I'm like, really?
Thank you for bringing back to why we should be talking about this. The dance number. Okay, it's a Busby Berkeley. It's basically a Gold Diggers of 1935 riff. It has Kate Capshaw doing the lead on it. She's singing Cole Porter's "Anything Goes" in Mandarin.
Well, both in English and Mandarin. Yeah.
Well, the just the title of the song is the only part that's in English. But then they do Busby Berkeley dancers, and they go full on where it's like glitter dust. There's one shot where everyone goes into splits, and then they do a reverse shot. They play a shot in reverse. In the background, people are walking backwards, but when they play it in reverse, it looks like they're walking forward.
Well, and this. We were talking about how directors want to do musicals so they can break reality. This is a perfect example to show somebody, because at one point she's in a was this in Shanghai? Is
Yeah.
they're in Shanghai
so.
in a club, and she's singing with some chorus girls. But at one moment, when the red smoke comes out, all of a sudden we don't know where we're at. We're in a Busby Berkeley stage in Hollywood, California, or wherever. You're in this big stage where this cannot be seen by the people in the club. We're seeing it, and that's so beautiful. And then then he has a transition back with the red smoke. Then he gets back into the club. That is why right there is a perfect example of why you have so much fun with musicals, because you can pull that off.
I see your point, but I want to point out that the sequence that comes after this, just the fight in the club when they have the diamond thing and like the...
Which I was dying to see.
That's another example of how Spielberg turns an action sequence into a musical sequence. I mean, this is a man who masters the frame. You know, you're constantly moving your eye back and forth.
Or the Jitterbug. Once the music stops and the fight starts, it's a musical too. Dun 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 dun. And then,
well, no, I'm talking about in Temple of Doom. There's no music in there, but it's just the way the rhythm with which your eye moves on that screen. The Jitterbug, you know, back
that's a fight sequence. I mean, that's and it's music, and that music's not diegetic. It's yeah. Whereas they were dancing to the orchestra playing, but the orchestra stopped. But also there's music going dun 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 dun, and they're fighting.
I guess my point is that visually, even without music, Spielberg's a musical director, and he's always been.
There's no music playing during the chase of the jewel around the
John Williams music.
Oh, okay, so I'm just saying
underscore.
Yeah, just like
not underscore. It's John Williams.
Just like both the Jitterbug and that's have that. I have to say I love he keeps the motif of the Paramount Mountain at the beginning, and it's on the gong, and I'm also thinking the gong is a little parody on the Rank Organization. Remember the Rank Organization films always had the big gong that opened up their films.
That's a good call. I mean, I should have known that or should have recognized that.
But yes, it's wonderful. I forgot. I remember how I got a really good buzz out of that when I saw it.
And then the rest of the movie. To be fair, Tipple of Doom gets a lot of assorted reactions from people.
Yeah, I need to watch it again. I'll be honest with you. I need to watch the whole thing, but I do remember. I think the only thing I remember, my takeaway back when I first saw it was that opening, and then everything else was like, eh.
So around this time, after this, someone asked Spielberg about a musical, and he said, funny enough, you should ask, I'm working on one with Quincy Jones. And then that never emerged, although they ended up working on Color Purple, which, besides Twilight Zone, was the only time Spielberg had not worked with John Williams up to that point. But also around this time, Quincy Jones was producing Michael Jackson, so this is when they started talking about doing a musical out of Peter Pan, maybe starring Michael Jackson.
Interesting, and then Michael works with Coppola and Lucas, and
right,
but not Steven.
Now, it's Scorsese.
And yeah, Scorsese, the band. Did Color Purple, but now it's a musical now, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's we're getting a lot of that happening nowadays, or a straight on film that ends up being a musical after all.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's talk of the movie we're about to get into, Hook, being turned into a movie. Well, yeah. Although Spielberg has Hook. What did you think of Hook when you saw it?
It's
I'm asking you about disappointing Spielberg, basically.
Yeah. I didn't.
Which is why maybe you didn't want to do this episode.
I haven't seen it since the theater. I remember
another recurring thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and I haven't. I have not revisited it. Here's another sense memory again. And I told you this before we started recording this. I showed it when you came up with this idea. I remember sitting in the theater watching Hook, thinking, this should be breaking out in songs. This feels like it should be a musical, and it's not. There's one point where the pirates are going, Hook, Hook, Hook. And
give us the hook.
And I'm just like, oh my God.
This is going to come up in a second.
And I'm just thinking, they should break out in song here. And they didn't. And I'm just like, it was like, it was just like, I was like on the edge of my seat waiting for a song to start. I just didn't deliver. And maybe that kind of threw me off. And then, maybe I was affected by all the the lackluster reviews that I was getting at the time, so I really we'll have to do a Ted Haycraft revisits films that he's only seen once podcast episode.
We're already doing an episode on Hook. We're not going to do another episode on Hook. This is it. This is your chance.
I know, but I didn't see it, so I may have a 180 degree come back and say it's wonderful. But no, I just remember that it was okay and it should have been a musical.
I rewatched Hook this week. Hook was a movie I watched a lot as a kid. It's
And you liked it as a kid.
Yeah, I was a young kid, and then I started reading its bad reputation, and then I started. Did you ever have that?
Did you rethink it?
Well, did you ever have that period when you really started getting into film, when you knew certain films' reputations? I think this is maybe more a video generation thing, but you started having a contrarian opinion to like.
Oh yeah,
I knew people hated Hook, and I started thinking, well, wait a minute, all Spielberg's career is about childhood, and this is him addressing it directly and trying to grow up, and then after this point, he pretty much makes only grown up, even though. There's Empire of the Sun and The Color Purple before this.
Yeah, the games movie critics play, and, I'm guilty of it too. And of course, that I always tell you that and I tell a lot of people that says, I'm not a full-time paid critic.
Okay.
So I can't see everything, and so I will, if I was devoted to Siskel and Ebert every week. So if Siskel and Ebert, especially if they both went or thumbs down or whatever. I probably would have passed. I'd probably pass. Now, there are some directors I will not pass no matter what. And Spielberg I will never pass a Spielberg film. I pass upon a Spielberg film.
My rewatch this week was more interesting. Let's put it this way. You saw what he was going for. There's been a lot of, I'd read some stuff online.
Are we talking about West Side Story now?
Hook. No, Hook.
Oh, Hook. Oh, no.
We're still on Hook.
Okay.
There's some stuff online. For starters, Hook was supposed to be a musical. And
I'm validated.
Hook was supposed to be a musical. John Williams got to the point of with Leslie Bricusse. They wrote like 8 songs.
Yeah, Leslie just passed away recently. He did Goldfinger lyrics and great lyricist.
And for a movie I've seen so many times, there's still 2 songs in the movie. Yeah. There's We Don't Want to Grow Up, the little song at the musical, or the kids musical at the beginning.
But it's done it's diegetic.
Yeah. And then there's When You're Alone, which Peter's daughter sings to try to... It makes all the pirates tear up, and it makes Peter's son Jack kind of come back.
Again, played off as diegetic.
It is a little bit of a burst out, just because it's odd that she's singing. But the songs... But the crazier thing is, of the songs that were in there, there is one with... This is so crazy. There's one called Childhood they wrote that was supposed to be a Maggie Smith song, that they immediately declared like this was the heart of the movie and would be an Oscar winner. And Maggie Smith couldn't sing, so the day after they wrote it, they got Julie Andrews to come down and sing it, that Maggie Smith is going to then lip sync back to afterwards, and cut from the movie. Now, to your point about Give Us the Hook, that cue, this was a shot song in the movie. It's called Low Below, and it's Bob Hoskins, and it even has a really... sounds like an odd moment where there's Bob Hoskins rapping in it, which I can't imagine early 90s being good. Now, the story I had read online, this is not confirmed just because it's an online story from back in the Ain't It Cool days. I read some review, but supposedly the story was Spielberg makes this giant movie that he supposedly had a fun time on, but it was way over budget. And they built, instead of going out on location, they just hung around the Sony lot, which used to be the Columbia lot, which is a very classic. A lot of the great MGM studio, Wizard of Oz would have been shot on these stages. And this movie was put together by this point when CAA put it together, but it was the packaging thing, where they get the agents put together, their clients all together, so they effectively do the mainline casting on a movie, and they sell them big line. Dustin Hoffman, Ron Williams, Julia Roberts, with a Steven Spielberg movie. The agents put this movie together. And Spielberg basically supposedly got to a point where he went to a screening in Dallas, Texas, which also came up in 1941, and maybe the same theater they showed Jaws and Sugarland Express and Close Encounters at. But the story goes, he showed Hook, and he cried in his limo and decided he needed to get back to some roots, and then that's when he decided to make Jurassic Park, which... by the time he's finished choosing Jurassic Park, he's more into Schindler's List. So he not only comes up with his biggest box office hit at that point, but his first Oscar, his artistic one. Now, I'd read that story a long time ago, but knowing all this musical stuff now, going into the test screening, what really had happened was the Low Below sequence. Supposedly, Spielberg wrote a letter to Leslie Bricusse that she mentions in her biography, that the reason the song was cut was because the audience was so into the movie, they expected the rest of the movie to turn into a musical. And it didn't. So everyone was disappointed with that. So my point is, Spielberg's been going his entire career trying to make a musical by this point, and he's the box office king, so he can do whatever he wants for the most part. More than, at least he has more agency than any other director in terms of choosing what he wants to do. He wants to do a musical. He finally does it. He finally gets and then he ends up having to cut big numbers from it, and the movie doesn't feel like a musical anymore.
Yeah, but are you saying there is a musical version of Hook?
There's more songs.
More songs, but it's still not quite a wall-to-wall musical.
I don't know. There's supposedly 14 total numbers, and Spielberg, when the 4K Blu-ray came out, none of them were put on deleted scenes, even though a lot of deleted scenes were added back.
Which makes me think of
but even the conception of Hook itself is a giant set on the MGM lot.
Yeah. Well, I know I'll be interested when I get around to revisiting it, see how it plays. But
I'm more interested. Like I could admit the movie. If you don't like the movie, I understand. Like it's but it just seems weird. This man, I don't understand why it's taking so long to him to get the musical. So anyway. Throughout this point, he keeps bringing up the option of putting musical numbers into different movies. He talks about doing a musical or a number in AI, which I always wondered, it's supposedly around the Gigolo Joe. What do you know? I wonder if it's supposed to be that. He talked about putting one in the Terminal. Going back to the stuff he produced, he did a lot of the songs for the American Tail movies, which were big. The music in that I was really young. Like the Somewhere Out There was one of my favorite songs when I was 8. There's a bunch of great songs in Animaniacs, Yakko songs in particular. So stuff he produced, he put some music into, but then nothing, just for a long time. I mean, he said and what music Spielberg? There's a quote around the time of Schindler's List when he comes back and says, "Yeah, I always want to do a musical," and he doesn't mention anything except West Side Story and Singing in the Rain, like the most obvious musicals to do. Like, I don't know. It makes sense, but at the same time, there's got to be more to why it's taken so long for him to do it.
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I haven't really, because we do get occasional musicals from some people here and there over the years. So if he doesn't, so I've been appeased that way.
Okay. So let's go from, I guess, Terminals 2003, I think, 2002, 2003, and all the way to 2021, West Side Story. I thought the wait was worth it.
You liked the West Side Story?
It is. I was blown the fuck away. It is.
Really?
It is my number 2 movie this year.
Oh, wow.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I know you went in having some trepidation.
Well, I got another analogy.
Okay.
And you remember this analogy too. This one, this maybe not as weird as the Moonraker one.
You do a Moonraker-esque one on this.
It's a
Chef's kiss.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
He announces he's doing Blade Runner 2049.
Uh-huh.
I'm like,
I sent you that link that he's doing Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood, and just to bug you with that.
Well, see, that's what I want to hear. Something different and new and hasn't been done.
Mm-hmm.
But here, I'm like, I had fallen in love with Villeneuve. I thought, oh my gosh, this is my favorite cool new director. And I went back and searched for his earlier stuff and it was just gobbling it all up. And so I'm like, do we need another Blade Runner? I mean, do we need a follow-up to that? Do we need a sequel? Do we need a franchise Blade Runner? I'm just like, I'm really scared. I mean, I'm like, it's in good hands, but I just, and then I go see it. And I was... And
you had a very similar reaction to Dune.
Well...
Going in.
Oh, no, yeah, that's actually twice.
That was the one you told me about.
I mean, you're right. I mean, maybe it's more so Dune. Something I'm like, he's already done a redo.
Which is again why I brought up. It was announced this week he's going to do an adaptation of Childhood.
Yeah, but see, I wish if he had announced that before Blade Runner, if he had done that next after Arrival, I would have gone, oh, cool. But I'm like, Dune? Do we need another Dune after David Lynch's? Do we need another one? So, but I have been totally like, oh my gosh, I love these two films. Blade Runner 2049, I love it. I love it, Dune. So I'm thinking, well, hopefully, I had the same kind of going into West Side Story. Unfortunately, I have to say, I wasn't. I'm not coming out of it like I did Dune or Blade Runner 2049. I was like, I'm not sure I'm getting this.
Listener, if you could see how wide my eyes are right now.
I know. Well, I'm surprised how much you liked it. Number 2. What's number 1?
Dune.
Oh, yeah. Duh. I don't know if it was the mood I was in. I saw it on IMAX, and I saw
it on IMAX too.
There was only 2 other people in the theater.
Same.
And yeah, I got to be honest. I don't want to force myself to say yeah, but I do want to see it again. I want to watch it. But you know what I want to watch? I want to go back. You did this. I did not. I need to go back and watch the original, which I saw not that long ago. I think Eric brought it in at 4-1.
Okay, so to your point earlier, you were talking about what's my relationship with older musicals. My counter argument, you've used this argument on me before, that like, why isn't Spielberg doing something new? Why isn't he doing an original musical? And my argument was West Side Story has had a history of being revived, much less a lot of Broadway musicals. There is an artistic way of which you reinterpret shows. How you redo a production is an art into itself. Yeah,
this is a very layered, troubled chit chat we could have about. I am not anti-remake. I'm not anti-readaptation, and certainly Broadway. I mean, that's all they do now half the time. I mean, a big bulk of their output is that's a given with a different cast and redo it and tweak it. Of course, he brings in a whole new screenwriter.
Tony Kushner, one of the greatest living American writers. Yes.
Yeah. Did you think it was an improvement?
Yes.
So
I have a friend on Letterboxd who said it in the most interesting way. He said, I think the original West Side Story is one of the greatest movies ever made, and yet somehow this movie is better. So what does that mean?
I do have one little standout. Do you want me to get to that or not?
I don't know what the hell. Like, I'm so shocked. I want to hear you why, but at the same time, I don't.
Actually, I remember right off the bat there was this one edit when they cuts to Maria in the window. And I thought it was just such a basic, simplistic, like dull cut.
The reason my point is that this is a great choice for him to do something that Spielberg has so much control over movies that sometimes these movies end up becoming his ideas of the moment. There's this. Have you ever read the Raiders Conference pages? They have this thing where it's basically Lawrence Kasdan, George Lucas, and Spielberg coming up on the fly with all the ideas for Raiders. And it's a really great screenwriting document to look over. I think it's in this document where at one point when Spielberg leaves the room, Spielberg's he comes up with gags. He keeps coming up with gags. So he's just coming up with ideas.
For the first Raiders.
Yeah. And it's like, and then Lawrence
Kaufman involved in this? Yeah.
No, this is post Kaufman.
Okay.
And so at one point Spielberg leaves the room or something, and Lawrence Kasdan turns to Lucas. Is like, do I actually have to put this in? And Lucas is just like, just wait. I'll either talk him out of it or he'll like. Because he's got such an idea factory that bad ideas come out. And a lot of the screenwriters that work for a director like Spielberg or that level, they're writing for Spielberg's ideas. Spielberg is so reverential of this book. They went back to the original show sequence. They changed the song order to the original stuff. He's so reverential of it that there's no extra indulgence, and every change seems thoroughly vetted. You know my argument that like there's a certain number of directors that turn to be out first draft directors, and Spielberg sometimes is one amongst them. This is not a first draft screenplay of his. Tony Kushner, every idea that's changed works, enriches. It's things they can do in modern times that maybe were a little tricky to do.
Give me an example. Yes,
the Latino casting, amongst other things.
Well, that's an obvious thing, but I mean,
yeah, the obvious thing needs to be said though,
right? But I mean, can you give me
the gentrification moment, the line at the just taking the Puerto Rican story, all the family, and fleshing it out. The neighborhood being moved out actually is supposedly going to be. First off, West Side Story's always been weird to me, just because I've only known modern New York, and the West Side of New York never seemed like a poor neighborhood to me, but at the time it was. And the area they're about to tear down is going to be turned into Lincoln Center soon. So the line early on that Corey Stoll's character says, where it's a new line where it's just like, you're the whites that got left behind, or the whites that like it's contemporary. It sings to America. in
No,
history.
I mean, I have no problem with that.
The Rita Moreno change, where she plays a new character named Valentino, changed away from Doc. The Doc character is now he's died, and Valentina takes most of her role in the show. But he was a white man who married a Latino or Puerto Rican woman, and their interracial marriage becomes a legacy generational thing of that. This has not gotten better. There's so much more depth, and West Side Story again is not.
I didn't really feel the depth though. I mean, I saw the changes.
You know what was fascinating was I had to read up the two articles I've cited a lot for both the Spielberg stuff here and on the changes between the movies. For the Spielberg musical is Tim Grieving wrote an article in The Ringer, and David Groh wrote one on Den of Geek on the differences between the different versions. And the thing is, like, Tony Kushner is such a skilled writer that every time there was something that I was like, that's different, or I vaguely remember that, like, no, this was change in the script that is so invisibly done. I mean, look at Tony's history where he went to prison in this now and is just coming back, and he was the Jets muscle.
He had no history in the first one?
No.
What about, I don't understand.
Roberto, the whole Puerto Rican family had no history. Their family, was it the mother's still in Puerto Rico and the father's in Puerto Rico and the mother's dead? Like, all this stuff is just not there.
But it worked still. So is it apples and oranges, or is it improvement? You're saying it's an improvement.
I don't know if improvement's the right word. I want to use richer.
Yeah.
Richer, deeper, and says more.
Doc was the guy who ran the grocery store.
Yes.
Why in this film, and is it in the first one, at the end, all of a sudden, all the Jets are in the shop.
That's in the original.
And I'm like, why are they, would she want them in the shop at that point of the narrative?
No, she wasn't. That's the point of the whole thing. And the other thing is they are able to make a little clearer. First off, they're
that wasn't clear to me, that why they would be sitting in the shop.
It's in both versions.
I know, but either way, I guess now if I watch the original,
they're protecting Tony and they're trying to figure out their next move.
Okay, but
them going
we don't know. The reveal of Tony being in the basement is way later. In that sequence, I'm like,
when Anita goes into the shop, they make their attempts to rape her much more clear. One big difference is what the original West Side Story is a very cinematic movie. I'm not going to say and Jerome Robbins, I always thought he got fired because he was trying to make it more cinematic, was the story I'd heard, or read at some point. But Jerome Robbins was also the original choreographer for it, and the violence in the original is all dance. This is not, and it is an improvement. It is visceral. The fights feel like fights. The first scene has someone getting a nail in his ear and bleeding, and it feels like real gangs fighting.
Okay. I mean,
stakes are higher. This level of stylization is interesting, but a little.
Yeah.
It doesn't have an effect. It does. I watched, again, as you mentioned, I watched the 1961 movie.
Right.
The night after, and it's still amazing. The opening is before watching it again, I had seen a 70mm print at the Alamo in like 2016, and those opening shots going uptown in 70mm especially are gorgeous, and it's like it's such an iconic opening.
Yes.
So I'm not taking away from the original or how cinematic the original is.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, it's not a competition.
No, and again, I'm thinking.
I'm so shocked.
Well, I joke. We make jokes about. Oh, I don't joke about it. It does seem to kind of be a thing that works. Going in with your expectations, where your expectations are.
Yeah, that's true. It's so true.
And
it's so weird.
And I'm thinking, either I had way too high expectations or something, but it just did not totally click with me the way it did with you. Obviously, you're over here just
going to my point earlier about Spielberg's camera. It just feels like he's constantly moving in both in a constantly moving, not hyperactive way, but it's so not measured. It's so done for a reason, but it's just so expertly done. It's some of the most expert. This is my favorite Spielberg movie. Maybe this is up there in my top 3 Spielberg movies of the millennium. It's up there with I love Munich, I love AI, and Minority Report is one of his best action movies of the last 20 years. This is my favorite movie, a Spielberg movie in 16 years since Munich.
No, cool.
It is a jolt of for Spielberg himself.
So should I get the Oscar?
I don't give a shit about the Oscar. He's got Oscars. He's good, right?
Okay.
I don't know. I don't. Again, it's not a competition.
It's honor to be nominated. Number two on Shane's list for the year.
It is right now number 2. I still have. I won't be. Hopefully we're still going to have our year-end wrap up around New Year's, and half our year-end wrap up is just list of movies we didn't see because we live in Evansville, Indiana. Yeah. But right now it's number 2.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, I don't know. In fact, it's funny because when they opened up with the whole thing about the Lincoln Center and the damage, I'm just like, well, nice CGI work here, and I'm not an anti-CGI person. I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I watch MCU movies, probably, so I can't use that as why I didn't get into it like you did. Like I said, I did. Yeah, I need to see it again, maybe. But of course, my track record of seeing movies more than once won't. If I'm around in another 20 years, maybe I'll see it.
Well, okay. So the narrative around West Side Story is that the elusive. It's a bomb. It didn't make a certain measured number.
That I don't like. I hate those social platform clickbait headlines and stuff.
Whose expectations were
and then also, is anybody reading the article? They just look at the headlines and move on. Algorithms. I'm just like, oh my gosh, why? The whole Ridley Scott thing of his him bitching and moaning and this and that.
Kids on their phones.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know. It's just and then again, both of us. You missed Belfast. It's already come and gone. Both.
I think it's coming back. But
we think. I'm sure.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But it's just let the film. I don't know. Those days are gone. I mean, we're in a different world, obviously. So.
I think the real ramifications here is this: if my theory about Hook keeping Spielberg away from musical for a while is true, does this keep Spielberg away from his next musical?
True, but how many more films does Steven Spielberg have in him?
Dude seems to be going.
Yeah.
This was a muscular movie too.
How old is he now?
He's got to be high 70s at least, if not pushing 80 yet.
For Quentin, he's in his old man era.
Yeah, and his next movie is another Tony Kushner movie, and it's autobiographical movie that he's been holding off of. So is this going to be his 400 blows?
His Cry Macho.
No.
I'm saying his
old man movie. Yeah, it's not going to be his old man movie.
No, but I mean, it's going to be.
I said this is going to be his 400 blows, his autobiographical masterpiece. No, but he's been holding off forever.
But it'd be his own man in terms of this is my finale. I'm going to go out on this.
I see Spielberg doing who gives a shit about box office? Here's the movies I've been wanting to make all my life.
Don't we have another Indiana Jones?
They got taken over by James Mangold.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
And then got pushed back a year because of supposedly reshoots.
Wow. Mangold directing it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to be. I'm no. Get off my lawn, kids.
You're getting your old man critic stage.
I'm the old man critic stage. I'll go see. There's a new film. I'll go see it and not read it because back in the when I was in the 70s and the 80s.
Back in your days, is what you're saying.
Back in my old that if a Cinefantastique came out or a little article in Rolling Stone, you were just so hungry for info. Now the info is so overloading that I almost run away from it.
That's true. That's very true.
So, but I don't know if that's an age thing or or a youth thing or age thing or whatever. I don't know, because I still think I have enthusiasm for cinema and films as much as I had when I was in my 20s. So
I appreciate that, Ted. I think your enthusiasm is going to be fine. My worry is I want more Spielberg to make more musicals.
No, that's fine. No, and that's great. I mean, and I'll maybe I'll definitely buy this when the Blu-ray comes out, and maybe I'll watch it. That's probably when I'll watch it again. So it's on Blu-ray if I get because there's getting out to the theater, and gosh, who knows? It may be gone by in a week or so. Hopefully it'll get through Christmas, and I think you might get a bump in Christmas. Hopefully,
let's hope it does.
Yeah.
I guess is that it for this episode?
I don't know. So are we at a blows here? Have we come to a?
No, not blows. I'm just.
I shocked you there. Give you a shock.
Yeah, I'm still kind of.
Because like I said, I went into Don't Look Up, and I was surprised how much I liked it, but I went in with way low expectations. So maybe I went into Spielberg musical, West Side Story, sure. The one point I did like, I want to point out, and I can't pronounce his last name, the guy who plays Riff. Mike Faison?
Yeah, former guest Henry Butash. He's in Henry Butash's movie Atlantic City Story, I should mention.
I loved him.
He's spectacular.
This is a star-making moment. I think this is if this doesn't put him on the map, I don't know what will. But because even you know what it is, I want to tell you that I saw in the trailer, because I saw the trailer. I've seen the trailer multiple times up on a big screen and on the TV screen. There's one sequence where they're walking with their paint cans,
mm-hmm.
and they stop at a crosswalk and let some people walk
mm-hmm.
by, and the look on his face, the way he handles that, just that one little tiny scene, and the look on his face, I go, I love this guy, and I hadn't seen the movie yet. To me, that's just amazing. So.
We didn't even get into the performances. Rachel Zegler is amazing as Maria. Ariana DeBose is amazing. And David Alvarez as Bernardo is so good. Marito Moreno as Valentina,
keep on.
Even Ansel Elgort, who normally doesn't do it for me, is just so charming as a singer. Corey Stahl is amazing too.
Yeah, I kept going, where have I seen him? Finally go, oh, Ant-Man.
Corey Stahl, that's all you know Corey Stahl?
Well, no, I know
okay.
from others,
but
that's where
you were not on trial for your Corey Stahl filmography.
But no, keep going with all the stuff you like, because you need to let the audience know why you liked it so much, because I don't think...
You have... Tony Kushner screenplay is worth its weight in gold. This is the one, and
Angels in America is the only thing I'm really up on Tony Kushner.
And he's mostly only written Spielberg movies
and Munich, right?
Spielberg movies.
Yeah, right.
He wrote Lincoln, Munich, but just little things like I forgot to mention this earlier. When going back to the original Broadway order, they move "I Feel Pretty" to later in the sequence, and it comes after the brawl.
That's what I thought it was. I thought that was a different place. Because you're all of a sudden it's like, whoa, tonal change.
But it's not. That's because you're used to this being a flippant song, and now it's supposed to be like she feels really good and knowing her world's about to come down on her.
Right. So yeah. No, it's well. You did you watch the original before you went to see the new one, right?
No, after.
You go backwards. Okay.
Yeah. And I had to reread. I had to read what was changed, and every time I was like, oh, that's different. And every time I A-B'd with the changes, I was like, that's a good move. That's a good move.
So, well, you're doing it backwards too. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad. That's cool. I just didn't, I don't know.
I don't want to put you on the spot for, some people critique this, but the Anybody's character, the way they make it a more modern gender neutral thing is interesting.
Right. That, because I thought that was an interesting take, because I bet and wasn't she more, it was handled differently in the West.
She was a straight up tomboy in the original, and then
right.
it was told that she couldn't get a guy, and there was a reason she acted that way in the original. Yeah,
right. So, no, I mean, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I really got it's and it needs to be seen on a big screen, and I think it's worthy of all the nominations. Like I said, my biggest takeaway is the guy, the Mike Faison or whatever his name is.
So, Ted, I feel a little bad for putting you on the spot for just giving you an honest reaction.
No. I mean, we didn't tell each other before we recorded.
Doesn't that make for good radio?
So
Ted is still telling you to go see West Side Story. I am emphatically telling you to get your ass out there and watch that movie. Make sure Spielberg makes more musicals. That's it for this week. Ted, what have you been practicing as you're going off sign off line for this?
When you're a jet all the way.
Oh, I thought you were going to tonight.
I'm sorry, I did. What?
I thought you were going to go with tonight.
Oh, well, actually, I did think about tonight.
Thanks everybody for listening. Tonight.